Alright, ready for some chocolate hazelnut magic? Today, I'm sharing one of my all-time favorite holiday treats, chocolate hazelnut fudge. Imagine rich, melt-in-your-mouth chocolate swirled with crunchy, roasted hazelnuts. It's the kind of dessert that disappears in minutes, trust me. And here's the best part. This fudge is so easy, but it looks and tastes like it came straight from a gourmet chocolatier. Stick around, because I'll share my favorite tips, including how to get those perfectly smooth layers and the best way to slice each piece into gift-worthy squares. I'm Arina. Here on my channel, I'm all about sharing my favorite recipes and little tips that make each one look just as amazing as it tastes, all from my kitchen to yours. I've linked all the tools and other recipes you might need down in the description. Let's dive in and start creating something delicious. First things first, I always measure out my ingredients beforehand. It just keeps everything moving smoothly. Trust me. When it comes to melting chocolate, I fill my saucepan about 1/3 full with water. Bring it to a simmer and then lower the heat to maintain it gently. Using a double boiler really helps keep the chocolate from overheating and seizing up. Then I set a large glass mixing bowl over the saucepan, making sure the bottom doesn't touch the water. This setup is key to melting our chocolate gently and evenly. And if you're curious about the best way to set up a double boiler, I actually have a separate video where I walk through the whole process in detail. Now for the main event, chocolate. I start with 3 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Chocolate chips melt so beautifully in a double boiler, and using semi-sweet adds that perfect balance of richness without being overly sweet. Next up is 1 can of sweetened condensed milk, that's 16 ounces. I always make sure it's at room temperature, which helps everything blend smoothly without seizing up. Sweetened condensed milk brings that creamy, thick texture that makes fudge so irresistible. Plus, it adds just the right amount of sweetness, so there's no need for extra sugar. Then, I add in a 1/4 cup of unsalted butter at room temperature. Softened butter is key for getting that silky texture we're aiming for. When the butter is at room temp, it blends in so much better with the chocolate and condensed milk. To finish off, I pour in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Just a splash, but it really rounds out the flavors and enhances the chocolate. Vanilla is like the magic ingredient that makes everything taste a little better. Each ingredient has its own role in creating that smooth, rich texture we love in fudge. For mixing, I always grab a silicone spatula. It's honestly my favorite tool here. Not only does it scrape every bit from the sides, no deliciousness left behind, but it also prevents sticking, which is especially helpful when working with thick, sticky ingredients like fudge. Plus, the flexibility of silicone makes stirring easier, especially when things start to melt and thicken. As I stir, I go slowly and consistently, letting everything gently melt together. I've learned that patience is key here. Rushing can mess up the texture, and no one wants gritty fudge. Keeping the heat low and stirring consistently brings out this gorgeous, glossy mixture that's completely lump-free. The glossy finish is my signal that everything has melted beautifully and is ready for the next step. every holiday season, one of my favorite things to do is put together a special box of homemade fudge for friends and family. I love seeing their faces light up when they open it. Each box is like a little collection of flavors, textures, and love wrapped up in one. I usually include a few different kinds of fudge, classic chocolate, peppermint swirl, maybe something with nuts, and even a seasonal one like pumpkin spice. I try to think about everyone's tastes when choosing the flavors, and it's so fun to hear which one becomes their favorite each year. Preparing these boxes has become a tradition for me. I start planning and making batches of fudge well in advance, usually freezing some of the flavors so they're all fresh and ready to go by Christmas. I have to be sneaky to keep everyone from snacking on them too soon. Each piece gets carefully placed in a cupcake liner, keeping the flavors separate and making the presentation a little extra festive. Adding a handwritten note or a cute holiday sticker on the box makes it feel even more personal, like a little holiday hug from me to them. What I love most is that these fudge boxes let me share a bit of the kitchen joy with everyone, especially for those friends or family members who don't bake as much. They appreciate the effort and the variety, and there's something incredibly satisfying about knowing I've created something that brings joy to people I care about. It's my way of spreading a little sweetness around during the season, and I honestly can't imagine Christmas without it. Time to add some crunch. I fold in 1 cup of whole, shelled hazelnuts. They add this beautiful texture and flavor to the fudge. I keep folding until the hazelnuts are nicely distributed. The key here is to fold gently so the nuts don't clump together, ensuring a little bit of crunch in every bite. Once the fudge mixture is silky and ready to pour, it's time to prep the pan. For this, I use an 8x8 cheesecake pan, which is my go-to for making fudge. If you're curious about why I favor this type of pan, I have a separate video where I dive into all the details of selecting the best pan for fudge making. It's honestly made a huge difference in how my fudge turns out. Now, to line the pan with parchment paper. This step is key for easy removal once the fudge has set. I like to cut slits at each corner of the paper. This trick helps it fit perfectly into the pan and prevents any annoying bunching or shifting. When I'm ready to take the fudge out later, all I need to do is lift it by the paper edges. If you're unsure about lining with parchment, don't worry. I've made a separate video walking through the process step by step, so be sure to check that out if you want a clear demo. Once your pan is ready and lined, you'll see how simple it is to work with. It's the little steps like these that make the whole process go smoothly. With my pan prepped and ready, I gently pour the glossy fudge mixture right into the center. This part feels so satisfying. Using a clean silicone spatula, I spread it carefully, making sure it reaches every corner and edge of the pan. I love how the silicone spatula glides smoothly over the fudge, letting me get an even layer without any sticking or mess. This step is crucial. It helps create a nice, even thickness throughout, which not only makes for gorgeous slices later, but also gives that perfect bite every time. Once the fudge is spread out, I take a moment to smooth the top as evenly as possible. This may seem like a small detail, but trust me, it's worth it. When the fudge sets, this smooth surface gives it that polished professional look. Plus, a smooth top makes it easier to cut into clean squares. Taking an extra minute or two here ensures the final result looks as good as it tastes. I hope you're enjoying making this chocolate hazelnut fudge as much as I am. If you're loving this recipe, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and tap the bell so you're always in the loop for more delicious treats. Have you tried making fudge before? How did it turn out? And if you've got any tips or creative twists, I'd love to hear about them. Thanks for spending time with me in the kitchen. Now, let's get back to finishing up these tasty fudge squares. For a final touch, I sprinkle a 1/4 cup of chopped hazelnuts evenly over the top, pressing them gently into the fudge with the spatula. It adds a nice bit of texture and lets everyone know there's hazelnut goodness inside. Once it's all smoothed out and looking gorgeous, it's time to let the fridge do its magic. Into the fridge it goes to chill and set properly. I recommend letting it sit for at least 2 hours, but if you can hold off, leaving it overnight makes a big difference. Trust me, that extra time in the fridge gives the fudge a firmer texture, which not only enhances the bite, but also makes it so much easier to slice into those neat, satisfying squares. If you're prepping for a big batch or need to make these ahead for gifting, letting the fudge set overnight is definitely the way to go. Plus, the flavors get to settle and develop even more, making each bite that much better. So try not to rush this step. Once the fudge is fully set, this is actually the perfect time to freeze it, if you're making it ahead or want to save some for later. If you're curious about how to freeze fudge properly, check out my other video where I break down the best freezing methods for fudge. Now, let's get down to cutting. I bring out my cutting board, a large knife, my 5-wheel dough cutter, and a wet kitchen towel for wiping the knife between each cut. Having these tools ready makes all the difference for clean, precise pieces. The dough cutter is fantastic for scoring even squares, but if you don't have one on hand, don't worry. I've got a separate video where I show a simple technique for scoring with just a knife. I begin by carefully peeling the fudge off the parchment paper, placing it on my cutting board. Taking a moment here, really helps keep those edges smooth. Once it's positioned, I grab my trusty 5-wheel dough cutter to start scoring. I gently roll it across the fudge in one direction, making sure each line is even and leaves a nice shallow guide. Then I turn the fudge block 90 degrees and score again, creating a grid of even squares. This scoring step is key because it acts as a guide for those final cuts, giving me perfectly sized pieces without guesswork. If you're working with a really rich fudge, a quick tip: lightly oil the cutter to keep it gliding smoothly. Taking a few extra seconds on this step sets you up for beautifully cut even squares that look as good as they taste. Now for the big cut. I grab my large knife, lining it up with the first scored line, and slowly slice through the fudge. After each cut, I wipe the blade with a damp towel to keep those edges sharp and clean. No stray crumbs here. This trick keeps the fudge looking like it just came from a high-end chocolatier. As I work my way across, I gently push the pieces back together after each slice. This little move helps keep the block intact, making it easier to line up for the next cut. Once the vertical cuts are done, I turn the fudge block 90 degrees to start on the horizontal cuts. Following the scored lines makes this step smooth and easy. Each slice releases a perfectly sized square, and wiping the knife between cuts keeps every piece looking flawless. And just like that, we've got perfect squares of chocolate hazelnut fudge. The rich chocolate, creamy texture, and crunch of hazelnuts come together in each piece, ready to be packaged up, gifted, or enjoyed right from the board. Here's a little special tip just for you. If you're looking to add some holiday flair to your fudge, try using cookie cutters. I've got another recipe where I show exactly how to make adorable fudge shapes with them. It's such an easy way to create festive little treats without the extra steps of baking. These shaped fudges make beautiful additions to a dessert spread or holiday gift boxes, adding that extra bit of charm to each bite. This fudge is creamy, crunchy, and just melts in your mouth. Whether you're gifting it or keeping it all for yourself, it's bound to be a hit. And if you're curious about how to package fudge for gifting, be sure to check out my next video, where I'll share some beautiful and easy packaging ideas that will make your homemade fudge look even more special. Thank you so much for watching. If you try this recipe, let me know how it turns out. I'd love to hear your thoughts, tips, or any fun twists you come up with. Happy fudge making, and I'll see you in the next video.